I'm Mike Maloney, and welcome to this special edition of the CSRM podcast with Andrew Fouts.
Hi, welcome to a special edition of the CSRM podcast. I am Andrew Fouts. I'm the Director of Digital Resources here at CSRM. And today we want to talk a little bit about something that we've talked about quite a bit on the CSRM podcast, and especially in light of quarantine and in light of things being closed and the virus and all the other fun stuff we've got going on in 2020. But we want to talk about a couple of different developments within social media as it relates to ministry, as well as some resourcing that we offer here at CSRM for you to be able to kind of navigate this a little bit. So most of you are probably aware that we have spent quite a bit of time actually trying to help people develop a digital side to their ministry, both overall church ministry as well as specifically within the sports field. We've done some reach gathering tracks on this about podcasting. We've done tracks on website design, talked about how to do Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and all the other sites, all those sort of things. We've talked about video games in light of sports ministry. We've talked about some different platforms like Church Gather Online that are able to help you navigate how to do church online together. But today we're going to focus on two new sites, even though they're not really new, they're just now suddenly popular, social media sites that are getting a lot of attention, especially from among Christians, evangelical Christians, and a lot of just conservatives across the country. We want to just kind of give you a little bit of an update on what these are, why they're suddenly popular, as well as the trend that we're seeing and a little bit of hopefully helpful encouragement in relation to what to do with all of this. So these two sites that have been around for a while but are now suddenly popular, one is called We and one is called Parlor. These are both kind of responses to some different things that Facebook has done, whether intentionally or not intentionally, over the past 6 years or so. One of them, We specifically, considers themselves an anti-Facebook, mostly an anti-Facebook due to privacy concerns that started appearing with Facebook back around 2012. Some of you are aware Mark Zuckerberg actually was called before Congress to discuss all this kind of stuff, and so some new security features were put in place. But that's kind of what We was created for, was as a response to that. So We is kind of like an older version of Facebook, almost kind of like the new version of MySpace that I don't even think lasted more than a couple of years, although it may still be out there. It literally focuses mostly just on the social aspect of social media. It's a place for you to be able to, connect with friends and family. It's mostly just about sharing what's going on, your current interests, former interests, places for you to be able to talk shop as far as, people that share interests with you, share hobbies with you, share careers with you, all that kind of stuff. It's really just a watered down old style Facebook that is not as much entertainment based. Parlor is the other site, and it's been around for a couple years now, but is just now recently starting to take off. Parlor is much more of a discussion-based platform. So it's one that is sharing news articles and discussing them, sharing blogs and discussing them. In a lot of ways, it can become a new blog for you. And it was built mainly because of the fake news and fact-checking, Facebook jailing, censoring patterns that started showing up on Facebook in the past couple years. A lot of people think that it is a little bit more liberally biased, and so conservatives especially were like, we need to go make our own site, and so Parlor has kind of come up out of that. Like I said, Parlor is more academic and more discussion-based. It's more about having dialogue with other people. There is no censoring on it unless enough of your peers that are discussing with you are able to prove that it is not an actual real article, in which case at that point it gets censored. It's a little bit more democratic as far as the censoring and the fact checking and things like that. Neither of these sites are ones that your church really needs to care about. It's not something that's going to make or break your online presence as a church. It may not be bad for personal use, but as far as your church having a profile on there, it would not necessarily be worth your time. Definitely wouldn't be worth the amount of effort it would take to figure it out. Neither one of them is business-based yet. And they're kind of at least designed with mission and vision to prevent that from ever happening. And so they're not something that you're going to want to go and have to relearn and do all this other stuff with. Now, as far as personal use, MeWe may be a good option for, the youth, the children's ministry staff to be able to be on there to have some dialogue with parents, things like that. Parlor would probably be a good one for more of the theology side of your ministry, as far as being able to talk theology with people. Those of you that have blogs, to be able to actually share your stuff before posting it on your actual blog to get some feedback. It's a good place for discussion and debate. Some of the bigger names in online apologetics ministries, like Cameron Bertazzi in Capturing Christianity, Michael Jones Inspiring Philosophy, Braxton Hunter, Trinity Radio, they already have kind of moved over to Parler. They haven't left Facebook, they haven't left YouTube, haven't left Twitter, but they've also gone and created a Parler page just as another place for discussion, things like that, because it's a very good atmosphere for that. With that in mind, part of what we also want to kind of take a couple minutes and talk about here is the situation around why these suddenly became popular enough that we caught wind of it. I had never heard of these before, which is why we've never discussed them before. I heard about them during the heat of the election time, and a lot of the reason I heard about during that time was because there was a kind of secret, but not secret because it was supposed to be a mass protest, but not a mass protest, movement on Facebook to basically have a conservative and evangelical exodus from Facebook to teach Facebook a lesson about censorship and things like that. I don't know necessarily how many people actually took it seriously, because most of the people that said they were going to be done with Facebook are still on there, even though they're doing some stuff on Parler also, probably mainly just because Parler still isn't as popular and there's not as many options. But the reason for this was because there was this sense that Facebook was trying to censor the gospel and trying to censor conservatism, censor political conservatism especially. And in light of the election and a lot of the polarization politically within the country, Facebook was seen as enemy number one for some evangelical churches, not just evangelicals and conservatives in general. And so the thought was that if we just go over to this other place, we can leave all the negative thinking, fact-checking, all of the liberalism behind us and create this, brave new world of just conservative talk and free speech, and we can share the gospel openly and talk about Jesus and talk about the church and all these other things and have no fear of anybody stepping on our free speech. The issue that I saw with this, especially in terms of digital ministry and it actually being a ministry, is that the thought process was people are trying to censor the gospel, and so the best way to deal with this is to just go and do our own thing. Church history has shown us that that is not the correct response to any kind of persecution, even though I wouldn't even classify what Facebook is doing as a persecution method. Scripture shows us that we're supposed to stand up for the faith, whether it's convenient. We see examples of Daniel, we see examples of the apostles, we see examples of the other prophets. None of them really were doing ministry in a place that they really felt welcome or felt like everybody was on their side. But the only way to spread the gospel to the non-believers was to be where the non-believers were. And so unfortunately what the thought process of I'm going to go where I can talk about God unrestricted, and doing so, what it was telling a lot of people that were staying with Facebook that may not have been believers or didn't see anything wrong with what Facebook was doing, was that your opinion is no longer valid to me, and so I am done listening to you. And all that does is now take any opportunity of being able to actually share the gospel with them off the table, because now if their opinion does not matter to you, then why should your opinion matter to them? Churches especially, this was something that I was seeing a lot of, where it was becoming so political online from pastors or from actual church pages that the actual ministry side of things was being lost online. It may not have been lost in person, it may not have been lost in everyday life, but online it was lost, and it hit right at the peak of when most people are having to attend church online. And so now what people are seeing when they are going to your pages on Sunday morning to watch the live stream, or they're going to your website, all this stuff, they're seeing these comments that are being made degrading their political views, not their lives, not their discipleship level, not their theology, but just their political views as far as where they fit within the American profile. This is something that, especially for us in the sports ministry world, should definitely be disheartening, because unfortunately this has been a lot of the criticism with getting some sports ministries started historically within churches and within certain denominations, of athletics is this otherworldly thing that promotes violence, or it promotes greed, or it promotes competitiveness, or all this stuff that we don't want in our church because it's going to dilute the gospel. So we're just going to cast it all aside and just focus on Sunday morning service and people coming in the four walls. And then all of a sudden we were shocked because nobody was coming in anymore. And part of what we talk about within the sports ministry world is the fact that sports is a bridge that is able to bring people from the community into the pews on Sunday morning, because they now have a common thing involved in a place outside of the four walls on a Sunday morning to be able to develop relationships, to that first B, the 5 B's that we have here at CSRM for evangelistic disciple making, of feeling like they belong to the community already. You don't want to lose that. This is similar to what we've talked about. Dr. Linville has talked about in his book, Christmanship. We talked about with Stephen Liggett on a couple of the episodes we had with him. Kenny Thomas and I discussed it, talking about different video games within ministry of biblically defensible sports. And the final phases of that is, how do the participants act? How do the coaches act? And how do the people watching react? And unfortunately, what we were seeing participants online fighting with each other, even fighting within families online and in full view, and degrading each other. And unfortunately, we're also seeing their leaders, the churches and the church leaders, doing the same thing. And so the reactions from everybody that was just outside watching was, well, I don't know that I necessarily want to do what they're doing or be a part of anything that they're a part of. We don't want to lose sight of the fact that our online ministry is a major part of our ministry, and especially now in quarantine and with things being closed down. Here in Ohio, a lot of churches still haven't met. I know the church that I attend, we have not actually had an in-person service since, a full service since March, and just a couple here and there services maybe in September. We've had some small groups that have been meeting, but for the most part, everything is focused on the Church Gather online and the Facebook pages. What you have on there is similar to the greeters that you have at the front door. You don't want to scare people away or make them feel unwanted or unwelcome or unheard before you can even begin to try to share Jesus with them. This is not a political statement. This is not a shame on you statement. This is not a you all need to get your act together statement. This is just something that we want you to consider going into 2021 as far as how your online ministry looks, how your church is conducting itself online, and especially for those of us in the sports ministry world, how we can continue to bridge the gap even when we can't meet on the field, but we can in a Facebook chat room or through an Xbox chat room or wherever it is that you're able to meet. If you're interested in learning more about this stuff or want to talk to us about this stuff, have comments about it, you can either leave it in the comment sections on YouTube or on Facebook. Those of you that are listening on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a review. You can talk about what we got right, what you think we didn't get right, all that kind of stuff. We also have the Tuesday talks, which we've dealt with a little bit on this. There's some things going on with Reach Gathering for next year that's going to address some of this stuff as well. We want you to stay tuned. You guys can go to overwhelmingvictory.org. That's where all of our resources are at. Dr. Linville's books are there. P.F. Meyer's book Life of the Shoe is there as well as Brian Mason's book that we talked about this year, Maintaining Pace. Rugged Discipleship is on there as well. You also can still contact us at csrm.org. You can, go to the store there as well. Our blog is still there where we cover some of these different topics as well. You don't want to miss out the exciting announcement we have coming out next week as well. And we also hope that you'll be back with us Christmas morning for the next regular episode of the CSRM podcast. I'll feature board member Jamie Balcom talking about how to use hunting in a ministry context as well. So thank you for listening, and we hope you guys will join us back here on Friday.